The chemical smell of antiseptic clung to my clothes as I stepped out of the hospital lobby. The Midtown Manhattan rain instantly soaking through my worn jacket. I stared down at my phone, reading the rejected transaction notification on my bank app for the fifth time. Transaction declined. Insufficient funds. $300,000. That was the required deposit for my emergency surgery to treat the aggressive localized tumor the doctors had detected 3 days ago. Money that should have been sitting untouched in our joint emergency account. The funds I had built over 3 years of quiet investment. I pulled up my mobile banking ledger and froze. The balance was zero. A series of rapid wire transfers, totaling $350,000, had been executed over the past 48 hours. The recipient, Apex Live Streaming LLC. My chest tightened, a sharp, searing pain radiating through my ribs, but it had nothing to do with my diagnosis. I hailed a cab and headed straight to Chloe's penthouse in Hudson Yards. When I unlocked the front door, the heavy bass of electronic music pounded through the hallway. Pink and blue LED strip lights flooded the grand living room. Chloe was standing in front of a ring light, holding an iPad, her eyes fixed furiously on a glowing screen showing a handsome young guy with heavily styled hair and an unbuttoned designer shirt. "Come on, chat. We're only 50,000 points behind," Chloe screamed into her wireless headset, her voice tight with obsession. "Send the Galaxy rockets. We cannot let Julian lose his crown tonight." Julian, the 22-year-old fitness streamer she had spent the last 6 months obsessing over. "Chloe," I said, my voice quiet, cutting through the blaring music. She didn't turn around. Her fingers tapped frantically on the tablet screen. "Not now, Ryan. The PK battle ends in 6 minutes. I need to drop another 50,000. I walked over, grabbed the iPad from her hands, and slammed it face down on the Italian marble coffee table. "Hey, are you insane?" Chloe spun around, her eyes flashing with pure rage. Her designer silk blouse was pristine, her face set in that arrogant, dismissive glare I had endured for 3 years. "Do you have any idea what you just did? Julian is in the middle of the Global Streamer Championship. You emptied our joint account," I said, looking into the eyes of the woman I had married 3 years ago, when I chose to step away from my family's global legacy to live a normal, quiet life. $350,000. That was my surgery money, Chloe. My procedure is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Chloe let out a harsh, bitter laugh, folding her arms across her chest. She looked at me as if I were a minor inconvenience blocking her driveway. "Oh, please, Ryan. Stop being so dramatic," she sneered, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Your little condition isn't going to kill you overnight. The doctor said it was a localized mass. It's not like you're going to drop dead right this second. The illness isn't going anywhere." I stared at her, feeling a cold, hollow sensation spread through my veins. "The illness isn't going anywhere? No. It can wait a few weeks," she snapped, stepping closer, her voice laced with absolute contempt. "Do you know what can't wait? Julian's career. If he wins tonight, he gets signed by Paramount Media. I promised him I'd secure the top spot on the leaderboard. My reputation in the VIP donor club is on the line." "Your reputation?" I chuckled softly, a sound entirely devoid of warmth. "You took my life-saving funds to buy virtual gifts for a kid who doesn't even know your real name. He knows who I am," Chloe shouted, her face flushed with irritation. "He called me his goddess on stream yesterday. What have you ever given me, Ryan? You sit in your quiet little consulting job, making peanuts, living in my orbit. You should be grateful I even married a nobody like you. If you need money for your stupid surgery so badly, go get a hard money loan. Go to a payday lender or take out a high-interest loan. You're a grown man. Figure it out yourself." I looked at her, really looked at her. For 3 years, I had concealed my true identity as Ryan Fletcher, the sole heir and global trustee of the Fletcher Financial Group, a conglomerate holding over $80 billion in global assets. I had played the role of the humble, quiet husband because I wanted a genuine life away from corporate vultures. I had silently funded her struggling marketing firm through offshore proxy accounts, turning her into a prominent female CEO in New York. And this was the return on my investment. "A high-interest loan," I repeated softly. "Yes, or go borrow from your little middle-class friends." Chloe grabbed her iPad off the table, checking the timer. "Damn it, I lost 2 minutes because of your temper tantrum. Out of my way." She pushed past me, sitting back down in front of her camera setup. I didn't yell. I didn't smash anything. I simply took my phone out of my pocket, unlocked the screen, and dialed 911. Chloe paused, glancing over her shoulder with a frown. "Who are you calling?" "Emergency services," I replied smoothly, putting the phone to my ear as the operator answered. 911, what is your emergency? "Hello," I said clearly, my voice echoing through the silent living room. "My name is Ryan Fletcher. I am reporting an active, high-value financial crime. My spouse, Chloe Bennett, has illegally misappropriated over $350,000 of marital and personal assets without authorization, transferring them to a third-party commercial platform, Apex Live Streaming, for personal gratification while intentionally denying me access to critical medical funding." Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief. She sprinted over and tried to snatch the phone. "Are you out of your mind? Hang up the phone, Ryan. Are you crazy?" I easily blocked her arm, stepping back. "I am also filing a formal complaint for intentional financial abuse and grand larceny. I request an immediate police dispatch to 450 Hudson Yards, Penthouse B." "Sir, officers are en route. Please stay on the line," the dispatcher responded. "Ryan, have you lost your damn brain?" Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking with fury and panic. "You called the cops on your own wife over a ranking battle. Do you know what this will do to my company's public relations?" "Your company?" I looked at her with a cold, terrifying calm that made her step back involuntarily. "Chloe, you didn't just steal money. You stole my tolerance." Before she could process my words, I pulled up a private contact on my encrypted messaging app and dialed a direct number. The call connected on the first ring. "Mr. Fletcher," came the crisp, highly disciplined voice of Arthur Vance, the senior managing partner of Vance Sterling, the most feared corporate litigation firm on Wall Street. "We have been monitoring your private accounts as per your baseline protocols. We noticed the unauthorized outgoing wires 40 minutes ago. Orders? Initiate Protocol 0. Arthur," I said coldly, watching Chloe's face drain of color as she heard the authority in my voice. "Freeze every corporate account tied to Bennett Media. Execute the emergency asset lock on the Hudson Yards penthouse and file an injunction against Apex Live Streaming for receiving stolen funds." "Understood, Mr. Fletcher," Arthur replied without a second of hesitation. "The injunctions will be served within 20 minutes. Welcome back, sir." I hung up and slipped the phone into my pocket. Chloe stood frozen, her chest heaving, staring at me as if I were a complete stranger. Who? Who were you just talking to? What Protocol 0? You told me to figure it out, Chloe," I said, walking toward the front door as the sound of police sirens began to echo from the street below. "So I did. Enjoy your streamer's live match while you still can. You're going to have a lot of time to support him from a prison cell." The flashing red and blue lights of 3 NYPD cruisers illuminated the glass facade of the Hudson Yards building. Within 15 minutes of my call, 2 uniformed officers and an assistant district attorney were standing inside the penthouse living room, while 3 suit-clad corporate attorneys from Vance Sterling took over the room with clinical efficiency. Chloe was hyperventilating, her hands trembling as she tried to explain herself to Officer Davis. "You don't understand," Chloe shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He's my husband. It's marital money. You can't arrest someone for spending money in a joint account. Ryan, tell them to leave right now, or I swear to God I will divorce you tomorrow and take every penny you have." Arthur Vance, wearing a bespoke double-breasted suit, stepped forward, opening a leather binder with cold precision. "Mrs. Bennett," Arthur said, his voice dropping like a heavy iron weight. "I am Arthur Vance, managing partner at Vance Sterling, representing Mr. Ryan Fletcher. First, the account from which you wired $350,000 was established as a restricted medical trust under Mr. Fletcher's sole inheritance clause, which you signed an acknowledgement for during your prenuptial agreement 3 years ago. Second, knowingly draining a restricted account to finance a third-party commercial entity while depriving the primary beneficiary of life-saving medical care constitutes high-grade financial fraud and intentional infliction of severe bodily risk. Chloe's face turned pale white. Prenuptial agreement? Inheritance clause? What are you talking about? Ryan works as an entry-level analyst. Correction, Arthur continued calmly. Mr. Fletcher allowed you to run Bennett Media using personal capital reserves under a subtrust. As of 10 minutes ago, Those reserves have been completely revoked. Furthermore, an emergency court order has frozen all operational accounts under Bennett Media Inc. Before Chloe could digest Arthur's words, her personal phone started ringing frantically. It was her chief financial officer, Sarah. Chloe snatched the phone, her voice frantic. "Sarah, what is going on?" "Chloe, we're ruined." Sarah's hysterical voice blasted through the speaker so loudly that everyone in the room could hear it. "The bank just froze our primary payroll and operational credit lines. Our vendors are canceling contracts, and Chase Commercial just sent an emergency audit team to our headquarters. They said our corporate backing was pulled by the master trust." "What did you do?" "No, no, that's impossible." Chloe gasped, her phone slipping slightly in her hand. "Fix it. Use the reserve cash." "There is no reserve cash. The bank locked us out," Sarah screamed. "And the police just showed up at our office with a subpoena for your transaction records." Chloe turned her head slowly, looking at me as if she had just seen a ghost. I stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, taking a slow sip of water, utterly indifferent to her downward spiral. Just then, the front door rattled open again. Two plainclothes detectives walked in, escorting a young man in handcuffs. It was Julian, still wearing his flashy, silk-streaming shirt, his face flushed with panic and tears smearing his makeup. "Chloe, help me." Julian sobbed the moment he saw her. "The cops pulled me out of my gaming house in the middle of the stream. They said I'm being charged with receiving illicit transfers and co-conspiracy to commit grand larceny. Tell them you gave me that money legally. Tell them." Chloe stared at her golden boy streamer, the smooth, arrogant online persona completely shattered into a sniveling mess. "Julian," she stammered, stepping back. "Don't Julian me, you stupid bitch." Julian roared, kicking at the police officer holding him. "You told me you were a multimillionaire. You said your husband was a nobody who wouldn't dare say a word. You ruined my career. My channel is banned." "Shut up. Just shut up." Chloe screamed back, her polished, elite CEO mask crumbling into utter chaos. "I gave you my money. I made you famous. You stole his money to buy virtual clout. Kid," Officer Davis interrupted, snapping heavy iron handcuffs around Chloe's wrists before she could react. "Get your hands off me." Chloe shrieked, twisting frantically. "Ryan, look at me. Tell them to stop. You love me. You spent 3 years taking care of me, cooking for me, backing me up. You can't do this to me over a stupid mistake." I walked over to her, stopping just 2 feet away. The sheer fear and desperation in her eyes were something I had never seen before. For 3 years, she had looked down on me like a dog she had rescued from the street. "A mistake?" I asked, my voice calm, almost conversational. "A mistake is buying the wrong brand of coffee, Chloe. Stealing $350,000 meant for my tumor removal surgery to buy a 22-year-old kid a virtual trophy isn't a mistake. It's malice. I was wrong. Okay, I was wrong." Tears finally spilled over her cheeks, smearing her expensive mascara. "I'll give the money back. I'll take out a loan myself. Just call off the lawyers. If I go to jail, Bennett Media dies. Everything I built dies." "You didn't build anything," I said quietly, looking down at her. "I built Bennett Media. Every major client you landed over the last 3 years, Vanguard, Sterling Global, Apex Capital, they didn't sign with you because of your talent. They signed because my family's foundation instructed them to give you contracts." Chloe's eyes widened to the size of saucers. What did you say? You wanted to know who I really am?" I pulled a sleek, silver platinum card from my wallet and threw it onto the marble table in front of her. "I am Ryan Fletcher, sole heir to the Fletcher Consortium." The silence in the room was suffocating. Even the police officers exchanged shocked glances. The Fletcher Consortium was a name that dominated global shipping, energy, and high finance. "No, no, you're lying," Chloe whispered, her knees buckling as she sank to the floor, her wrists bound behind her back. "You're just an analyst. You're just Ryan." "Not anymore," I said, turning my back on her. "Arthur, handle the arraignment. Make sure bail is set at a level she cannot afford." "With pleasure, Mr. Fletcher," Arthur replied, opening his tablet to execute the directives. Ryan, please, don't leave me." Chloe's desperate shrieks echoed down the corridor as the police dragged her and Julian toward the elevator. "Ryan, I'm your wife. Ryan." I didn't turn back once. I picked up my coat, stepped out into the crisp night air, and got into the back seat of a waiting black Rolls-Royce Phantom. My private secretary, Eleanor, handed me an encrypted tablet. "Sir, your emergency surgery has been rescheduled for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. at Mount Sinai Private Wing. The top surgical team in North America is assembled." "Good," I said, looking out at the city skyline. "And Bennett Media?" "We are initiating the hostile takeover at dawn," Eleanor replied coldly. "By the time Mrs. Bennett gets her phone call from the holding cell, she won't even own the chair she used to sit on." By 9 a.m. the following morning, my 3-hour procedure at Mount Sinai was successfully completed. Sitting in the VIP recovery suite, I adjusted my collar, completely untroubled by the minor incision, while Eleanor briefed me on the overnight developments. Due to the overwhelming evidence of grand larceny and financial fraud, Chloe's emergency bail hearing had been set at $1.5 million, an amount she couldn't come close to raising with her frozen accounts. Her family had refused to post collateral after learning Vance Sterling was leading the prosecution. Panicked and desperate, her attorney had managed to secure a temporary 24-hour conditional release on signature bond under strict travel restrictions so she could try to settle her corporate obligations. She immediately headed straight back to the Hudson Yards penthouse, assuming she could at least secure her personal luxury items, designer jewelry, and titles. When her taxi pulled up to the main entrance of the tower, 2 broad-shouldered security guards in crisp black uniforms stepped forward, blocking the glass doors. "What is the meaning of this?" Chloe barked, her voice raspy from spending the night in a holding cell. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair disheveled, and dark circles bruised the skin beneath her eyes. "Move out of my way. I live in Penthouse B." The head of building security, a retired NYPD veteran named Marcus, stepped forward holding an electronic tablet. "Mrs. Bennett," Marcus said impassively, "your access keycards have been deactivated. You are no longer permitted on the residential floors of this building." "Deactivated?" Chloe screamed, drawing looks from passers-by on 10th Avenue. "Are you insane? That penthouse belongs to me. My company leased it. I have millions of dollars worth of clothes, watches, and art in there." "Correction," Marcus replied, turning the screen toward her. "Penthouse B is not leased by Bennett Media. It is owned outright by the Fletcher Global Real Estate Trust. The primary deed holder and sole occupant listed on the building register is Mr. Ryan Fletcher." Chloe stared at the screen, her lips trembling. "That's a mistake. Ryan doesn't own this building. He's a middle-class nobody. I let him live there. Mr. Fletcher purchased the top 3 floors of this tower 4 years ago in cash," Marcus said, his voice entirely devoid of sympathy. "Furthermore, Mr. Fletcher has executed a formal eviction order under the trust's commercial clause. All unauthorized personal property left inside has been inventoried, packed, and transferred to a bonded storage facility pending public auction to recover stolen funds." Right on cue, 2 movers walked out of the service elevator carrying 6 large, sealed plastic bins labeled Auction Lot. "Bennett, stop. Put those down." Chloe rushed forward, grabbing one of the bins, but a security guard politely yet firmly intercepted her, stepping between her and the movers. "Those are my Hermes bags. My diamond necklaces. You can't take those. They were purchased using funds drawn from Mr. Fletcher's proxy accounts over the last 24 months. Arthur Vance's voice echoed behind her as he stepped out of a black town car. Under federal civil asset forfeiture, any items acquired through misappropriated trust capital are subject to immediate liquidation. Chloe turned around, her eyes wild. "Arthur, where's Ryan? Tell him to come out and talk to me right now. He can't do this to me. We're still legally married." "Mr. Fletcher is currently conducting high-level business," Arthur said smoothly, pulling a crisp set of legal documents from his briefcase. "And as for your marriage, I am officially serving you with these." He handed her a thick legal folder. Chloe looked at the bold header on the top page. "Petition for dissolution of marriage. Absolute fault asset forfeiture." "Divorce?" Chloe whispered, holding the papers as if they were burning her hands. No, I won't sign it. I won't give him a divorce. If he wants to leave me, he's going to have to split his fortune with me. Half of everything he owns belongs to me under New York marital law." Arthur let out a quiet, dry chuckle. "Mrs. Bennett, I strongly advise you to read Section 4 of your prenuptial agreement. You explicitly agreed that in the event of proven infidelity or criminal misconduct against the trust, you forfeit all rights to spousal support, joint property, and marital assets, while assuming 100% of the liabilities. Infidelity. Chloe stammered. I didn't sleep with Julian. You funneled $350,000 of your husband's medical funds to a male streamer while publicly calling him your darling on live broadcasts, Arthur said coldly. The family court considers that severe emotional and financial betrayal. You leave this marriage with $0, zero assets, and a pending federal indictment. At that exact moment, a low, powerful rumble echoed down the street. A convoy of 4 pristine, obsidian black Rolls-Royce Cullinans, escorted by 2 private security motorcycles, pulled smoothly up to the private residential valet curb. The rear door of the lead vehicle swung open. Marcus and 3 security officers instantly snapped to attention, bowing their heads in deference. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, wearing a custom charcoal Seville rose suit and platinum Patek Philippe on my wrist, looking completely refreshed. Chloe gasped, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of me surrounded by a team of elite corporate aides. This wasn't the quiet, unassuming man who used to prepare her dinner and wait up for her until midnight. This was a man who looked like he owned the entire city skyline. Ryan, Chloe cried out, dropping the legal folder as she broke past the security line and ran toward me. Ryan, look at me. Eleanor stepped in front of her, raising a hand, but I held up a finger, signaling Eleanor to stand down. Chloe stopped 3 feet away from me, tears streaming down her pale face, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Ryan, please, she begged, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. I was blind. I didn't know. I didn't realize who you were. I was manipulated by Julian. He tricked me into spending that money. You know how much I loved you when we first met. When we first met, I said, my voice as cold as ice. You were a hungry entrepreneur who promised to build something real. Over 3 years, I gave you every resource, every contract, and every opportunity to show me who you really were. And I can be that woman again. Chloe wept, reaching out to grasp my sleeve. Give me one more chance. We can fix Bennett Media together. You can manage the company. I'll do whatever you want. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then looked up into her eyes with pure, unadulterated coldness. You didn't just fail a test, Chloe, I said quietly. You left your husband to die for a piece of digital clout. You told me my illness wasn't going anywhere and that I should take out a high-interest loan. Chloe flinched as if I had slapped her across the face. So here is my advice to you, I continued, leaning in slightly, so only she could hear. Go find a payday lender. Because by 2 p.m. today, Bennett Media's board of directors will convene for an emergency vote to strip you of your CEO position. And the person chairing that meeting will be me. I turned on my heel and stepped into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. Ryan, no, Chloe screamed, throwing herself against the tinted glass window as the door snapped shut with a heavy vacuum seal. The convoy pulled away from the curb, leaving Chloe standing alone on the sidewalk, clutch of legal papers blowing in the wind, as passers-by pulled out their phones to film the disgrace, screaming at the empty street. By 1:45 p.m., the glass-walled main conference room on the 40th floor of the Bennett Media headquarters was packed. The mood was thick with tension. The company's 10 major equity shareholders, key division heads, and senior legal counsel sat around the long mahogany table, talking in anxious, hushed whispers. Chloe burst through the double doors, wearing a hastily purchased blazer she had bought off the rack at a hotel gift shop. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, but her bloodshot eyes and pale skin betrayed her absolute desperation. Chloe, Mark, the lead board director representing a major venture fund, stood up immediately, his face dark with fury. What the hell is going on? The banks froze our working lines. Our main clients are terminating their retainers, and the news is saying you were arrested last night for grand larceny. It's a temporary misunderstanding, Chloe shouted, slamming her hands onto the table as she took her usual seat at the head of the board. Listen to me. It was a domestic dispute with my ex-husband. Ryan threw a temper tantrum over a financial transaction and called the cops to humiliate me. My legal team is handling it right now. A domestic dispute. Mark threw a stack of printouts onto the table. Our stock value dropped 40% in over-the-counter trading this morning. And who the hell is this Fletcher Consortium that just bought out 60% of our distressed debt and forced this emergency restructuring meeting? Chloe swallowed hard, her chest heaving. It doesn't matter who bought the debt. I am still the founder and CEO of this company. I hold the majority voting rights under our corporate charter. You held majority voting rights, a calm, terrifyingly familiar voice echoed from the hallway outside. The heavy mahogany doors swung open wide. Four towering private security officers in charcoal suits stepped in first, taking positions along the wall. Behind them walked Arthur Vance, holding an encrypted leather briefcase, followed by Eleanor, who carried a polished silver tablet. And then I walked in. I was wearing an obsidian black bespoke suit, my hair styled, exuding an air of absolute authority that commanded the entire room. Two executive aides followed a step behind me. The room fell dead silent. Chloe's eyes nearly bulged out of her head. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned stark white. Ryan? What? What are you doing here? Get out. Security. Remove him from this floor. None of the security guards moved an inch. Mark and the rest of the board members stared in total shock. Ryan? As in, Chloe's husband? The guy who works as an entry-level analyst? I walked straight to the head of the table. I didn't say a word to Chloe. I simply stood beside her chair, looking down at her with a look of supreme indifference. Arthur Vance stepped forward and tapped his briefcase onto the table. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I am Arthur Vance, managing partner at Vance Sterling, representing the Fletcher Consortium and its primary trustee, Mr. Ryan Fletcher. Gasps erupted across the room. Fletcher Consortium. Mark gasped, rising halfway out of his seat. The global private equity giant. Correct, Arthur continued smoothly. As of 12 p.m. today, the Fletcher Consortium executed a debt-to-equity swap, foreclosing on $45 million in defaulted credit facilities previously extended to Bennett Media. As a result, Mr. Ryan Fletcher now directly controls 68% of the voting equity in this firm. No, that's illegal, Chloe screamed, leaping out of her chair, her voice breaking into a hysterical shriek. You used corporate proxies. You hid this from me. I am the CEO. You were the CEO, Mrs. Bennett, Arthur said coldly, pulling out a legal document. Resolution 104A is now on the floor. Motion to immediately remove Chloe Bennett from the position of Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board for gross negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, and criminal misappropriation of company assets. I vote no, Chloe shouted, looking around the room frantically. Mark, Stephen, vote with me. We built this together. You can't let him do this. Mark looked at Chloe like she was radioactive. He slowly sat back down and raised his hand. The venture group votes yes to remove. The institutional investors vote yes, another director added without a second of hesitation. Yes, yes, yes. The votes cascaded around the table like falling dominoes. Chloe stood frozen, watching every single person she considered an ally abandon her in a matter of seconds. The motion passes unanimously, Arthur declared, filing the paper into his folder. Mrs. Bennett, your employment with Bennett Media is officially terminated effective immediately. You can't do this to me, Chloe sobbed, turning to me, her eyes filled with tears, anger, and absolute terror. Ryan, I built this company with my own sweat and blood. You watch me stay up until 3 a.m. every night. How can you take it away from me? You didn't build this, Chloe, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, deep, and resonated through the silent room. You built a house of cards on a foundation I secretly provided. Every breakthrough deal this company landed over 3 years was signed because my foundation guaranteed your performance bonds. I let you play the brilliant female CEO because I loved you. But you mistook my quiet support for weakness. Chloe sank back into her chair, her face completely drained of color. You set me up? No. You set yourself up when you decided $350,000 for a male streamer's ego was worth more than your husband's life. I replied, pulling out my pen. I am also revoking all proprietary marketing software patents licensed to Bennett Media under my personal holdings. Without those patents, this company is just an empty shell. Mr. Fletcher, Mark stepped forward, bowing his head respectfully toward me, his hands trembling slightly. Please, if you revoke those patents, The company will go bankrupt by the end of the week. Hundreds of employees will lose their jobs. Is there any room for negotiation? There is, I said, looking at Mark. I am liquidating Bennett Media's assets and absorbing its core staff into Fletcher Media Corporation. Every hardworking employee keeps their job and gets a 20% raise. Except for one person. I pointed a single finger toward Chloe. Escort the former CEO off the premises, I ordered cold-bloodedly. And make sure she leaves with only what she brought into this marriage, which is nothing. Two heavy-set security guards immediately stepped up behind Chloe, grabbing her by her arms and pulling her out of the leather executive chair. Ryan, please, don't do this. Chloe shrieked, kicking and struggling as she was dragged toward the glass doors in front of her entire board of directors. I'm sorry. I'll kneel. I'll apologize to you on live TV. Just give me back my company. Ryan. I sat down in the high-backed CEO chair at the head of the table, crossing my legs as Eleanor handed me the master operations ledger. Shall we begin the restructuring, Mr. Fletcher? Mark asked, his tone immensely submissive. Yes, I said, not even glancing at the doorway as Chloe's fading screams echoed down the elevator shaft. Let's clean up the trash. By late afternoon, the news of Chloe's dramatic downfall and the hostile takeover of Bennett Media hit every major tech and business outlet in New York. Stripped of her CEO title, locked out of her accounts, and facing imminent indictment, Chloe sat in a booth at a dim diner near Queens, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. Across from her sat Julian. He had been released on a temporary citation pending his formal arraignment, but his pristine influencer persona was completely shattered. His dark hair was messy, his eyes panicked, and he was furiously deleting comments on his phone. My channel is gone, Chloe. Julian hissed, slamming his phone onto the sticky laminate table. Paramount Media canceled my contract signing. My manager dropped me an hour ago. The police frozen the 20 grand I already withdrew from Apex. Chloe looked up, her expression desperate. Julian, listen to me. We can fix this. I still have some jewelry in my handbag, and my lawyer says if we file a counter-suit against Ryan for corporate sabotage. Are you out of your mind? Julian spat, leaning across the table, his face twisted in disgust. Countersuit. Do you know who Ryan Fletcher is? He's the heir to an $80 billion empire. He owns half of Wall Street, you stupid, delusional bitch. Chloe flinched, staring at him in utter shock. Julian, how can you talk to me like that? I sacrificed everything for you. I took his surgery money for you. I made you number one on the leaderboard. Julian let out a loud, mocking laugh that made people at the surrounding tables turn to look. Sacrificed for me. Julian sneered, shaking his head. You didn't do shit for me. You used me to feed your own pathetic ego. You wanted to play the powerful big shot sponsor in front of your little online friends. That's not true. Chloe gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. I cared about you. You called me your goddess. I called everyone who dropped 50 grand my goddess. Julian leaned in close, his voice cutting like broken glass. You think I actually liked you? You're a middle-aged, arrogant, insecure control freak. I laughed behind your back every time you wired money from your husband's account. My friends, and I called you our personal ATM. Chloe stared at him, her chest heaving as if she had just been punched in the gut. The romantic illusion she had built over 6 months shattered into a million sharp, painful pieces. You were just using me, she whispered, her voice cracking. Of course I was using you. Julian stood up, grabbing his leather jacket. And now you're radioactive. The cops think I was your co-conspirator. I'm facing federal wire fraud charges because you were too stupid to realize your quiet husband was a billionaire. Stay the hell away from me, Chloe. If I go to prison, I'm telling the prosecutor it was all your idea. Without another word, Julian turned on his heel and walked out of the diner, leaving Chloe sitting alone in the booth, her entire world reduced to ashes. She sat there in silence for 10 minutes, the harsh reality sinking into her soul. She had traded a man who secretly gave her an empire, who loved her quietly for 3 years, for a parasite who viewed her as nothing more than a foolish mark. Trembling, Chloe pulled out her phone and opened her bank app. Her account balance read 0. Her personal credit cards were declined when she tried to pay for her coffee. Just then, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Sarah, her former CFO. Chloe answered frantically. Sarah, please tell me there's something left. Is there any reserve fund in my name? Chloe, Stop calling me. Sarah's voice was deadpan and cold. The federal marshals just left the office. They seized all your personal assets, including your BMW and your summer house in the Hamptons. Everything was pledged as collateral against the corporate lines Ryan pulled. Sarah, please, I have nowhere to go. Chloe sobbed into the receiver. Can I stay at your place for a few nights? Just until I figure things out? Stay with you? Sarah chuckled bitterly. Chloe, every board member, every vendor, and every employee knows what you did. You let your husband almost die so you could throw cash at a boy on the internet. Nobody in New York wants to be anywhere near you. You're poison. The line went dead. Chloe held the phone against her ear, listening to the hollow dial tone. Her phone screen flickered, showing a push notification from the New York Post. Fletcher Consortium hosts annual global charity gala at the Plaza. Ryan Fletcher to make first public appearance as chairman. Chloe looked at the timestamp on the notification, 8 p.m. tonight. She wiped her tears, a manic glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes. The Plaza? He'll be at the Plaza. If I can just see him face to face without his lawyers around. He'll remember who I am. He loved me. He has to forgive me. She pulled out a crumpled wad of cash from her pocket, the last $50 she had in the world, threw it on the diner table, and ran out into the pouring rain to find a cab. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was draped in dark velvet and bathed in warm gold light. Wall Street Titan executives, European royals, and global tech barons mingled over vintage champagne. At the center of the room stood Ryan Fletcher, looking immaculate in a tailored midnight blue tuxedo, flanked by top international diplomats and venture capitalists. Beside him stood Lady Evelyn Vance, the brilliant heiress to a major European banking dynasty and Vance Sterling's top international strategist. She laughed softly at something Ryan said, leaning in with effortless grace. Outside the grand glass entrance, rain lashed against the marble steps. Chloe stood near the red carpet, completely drenched. Her borrowed dress was ruined, mud splattered her heels, and security guards held her back behind the velvet ropes alongside shouting paparazzi. Ryan! Ryan! Chloe screamed, her voice hoarse, attempting to throw herself past the security line. Look at me. It's Chloe. Let me in. Two heavy-set security guards seized her arms immediately, pinning her back. Ma'am, stand back. This is a private event. I am his wife. Chloe shrieked, struggling frantically as cameras flashed in her face. Tell him I'm here. Ryan. The commotion caught the attention of the crowd inside. Guests turned toward the entrance, murmuring in quiet amusement. Ryan paused his conversation with the French ambassador, turned slowly, and looked toward the glass doors. He gestured faintly to Marcus, his chief of security, who nodded and walked to the doors. Let her through to the foyer, Marcus ordered the guards. The guards released Chloe, pushing her inside the grand marble foyer. She staggered forward, wiping wet hair from her face, her eyes locking onto Ryan as he walked calmly toward her, stopping 5 feet away. Lady Evelyn stood a few steps behind him, looking down at Chloe with quiet pity. Ryan. Chloe wept, dropping to her knees on the marble floor, completely unconcerned with her dignity. Thank God. Thank God you let me in. Please, listen to me for just 2 minutes. You have 1 minute, Chloe, Ryan said, his hands casually in his tuxedo pockets. His voice was utterly level, lacking even a trace of anger. I went to see Julian, Chloe sobbed, looking up at him with red, swollen eyes. You were right. He was a monster. He laughed at me. He was just using me to steal your money. I was so stupid, Ryan. I fell for his lies because I felt insecure around you. I was wrong. Ryan stared down at her, his expression unreadable. Julian didn't force you to drain my medical account, Chloe. You made that choice yourself. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Chloe reached out, trying to grab the hem of his trousers, but Marcus stepped forward, quietly blocking her hand. Please, Ryan, give me a second chance. We can start over. I don't care about the company, or the money, or Hudson Yards. I just want my husband back. I know you still care about me. You let me in tonight. Ryan let out a soft, low sigh. I let you in because you were making a scene in front of my guests. Not because I care. No, that's not true. Chloe wept, shaking her head hysterically. We spent 3 years together. You cooked for me. You took care of me when I was sick. You looked at me like I was your whole world. You can't just erase that. I didn't erase it. You destroyed it, Ryan said, leaning down slightly, his dark eyes locking onto hers with absolute finality. I offered you 3 years of absolute devotion, Chloe. I was willing to give you my empire, my name, and my life. But when I was dying, you told me my illness wasn't going anywhere and handed my life-saving funds to a boy on the internet. He straightened up, adjusting his cuffs. The Ryan who loved you died in that hospital lobby yesterday morning, he added smoothly. The man standing in front of you owes you nothing. Lady Evelyn stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Ryan's arm. Ryan, the Minister of Finance is waiting in the private lounge. We should head back inside. Ryan turned his head toward Evelyn and smiled faintly. Of course, Evelyn. Let's go. Ryan. Who is she? Chloe shrieked, trying to crawl forward, her face contorted with jealousy and heartbreak. Who is she? You're replacing me already. Ryan paused and glanced over his shoulder one last time. We signed the final divorce decree an hour ago, Chloe. Legally and personally, we are complete strangers. Do not contact me again. No. Ryan. Ryan. Chloe's desperate screams filled the foyer as Ryan turned his back and walked into the grand ballroom, the heavy oak doors closing smoothly behind him, shutting out her cries completely. 2 NYPD officers stepped into the foyer from the street entrance, holding a fresh warrant. Chloe Bennett, Officer Davis called out, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. You're under arrest for federal wire fraud, tax evasion, and grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent. As the cold steel snapped around her wrists once more, Chloe looked up at the closed double doors of the ballroom. Inside, applause erupted as Ryan took the stage to announce a multi-billion-dollar global initiative. Outside, in the cold rain, Chloe was led away into the back of a police car, realizing with absolute certainty that she had thrown away a king for a worthless stone. The stark, fluorescent lighting of the visitation room at the Rikers Island Correctional Facility buzzed softly overhead. Chloe sat behind the thick glass panel, clad in a faded orange jumpsuit. Her face was hollow, her eyes bloodshot, and her hands trembled as she clutched the steel frame of the table. In just 2 weeks, the high-flying female CEO of New York had been stripped of everything. Facing multiple counts of federal wire fraud and grand larceny, her legal defense had completely collapsed when Julian agreed to testify against her in exchange for a plea deal. The heavy steel door at the end of the room clicked open. I walked in, wearing an unbuttoned dark gray charcoal suit with no tie, looking calm, sharp, and completely distant. Arthur Vance walked a half-step behind me, carrying a thin leather folder. Chloe's breath hitched. She scrambled to snatch up the phone receiver on her side of the glass, her knuckles turning white. I sat down on the metal stool, picking up my receiver without a hint of emotion. Ryan. Chloe's voice came through the speaker, hoarse and broken, tears immediately flooding her cheeks. You came. I didn't think you'd come. I'm here to close the account, Chloe, I said, my voice smooth and flat. Arthur brought the final asset liquidation papers. Once you sign the remaining forfeiture waivers, the criminal civil restitution claims against you will be settled, and your sentence will be capped at 5 years instead of 15. 5 years. Chloe choked back a sob, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Ryan, please, look at me. I'm dying in here. Every night I close my eyes. All I see is you coming home from work, bringing me hot soup when I stayed up late, holding my hand when Bennett Media almost went under 2 years ago. You didn't think about any of that when you drained $350,000 from my medical account, I said calmly. I was blind. I was insane. She screamed softly into the receiver, slamming her palm against the glass. I thought you were just a safe, ordinary guy who would always be there. I thought I was the powerful one. I wanted to feel important, Ryan. I wanted Julian and all those people online to praise me because I felt small next to you without even realizing why. You felt small because you built your entire identity on vanity, I replied, looking directly into her frantic eyes. You spent 3 years looking down on me as an entry-level analyst. Did it ever occur to you why a man who allegedly made $60,000 a year could effortlessly solve your company's supply chain crises overnight? Chloe froze, her jaw trembling. What do you mean? 2 years ago, when your primary logistics vendor canceled your contract, it wasn't a coincidence that Global Cargo Logistics stepped in 12 hours later with a 50% discount, I said quietly. I own Global Cargo. Last year, When your firm was sued for copyright infringement, the plaintiff didn't drop the suit because of your lawyer. They dropped it because Arthur Vance made one phone call on my behalf. Chloe's eyes widened in horror as the crushing weight of the truth settled into her chest. I didn't hide my identity to fool you, Chloe, I continued, leaning in slightly. I hid it because I wanted a life where someone loved me for who I was, not for the Fletcher family name. I gave you my absolute trust. All you had to do was choose me when it mattered. And I threw it away. Chloe wept uncontrollably, her shoulders violently shaking as she slumped over the metal ledge. I threw away the only man who ever truly protected me, for a boy who sold my dignity for virtual gifts. Yes, I said smoothly. You traded a king for a parasite. Arthur laid the forfeiture documents flat against the glass, pointing to the signature line. Sign the forms, Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Fletcher's private jet leaves for London in an hour. Chloe looked at the pen in her hand, tears splashing onto the legal paper. She signed her name with trembling strokes, knowing that with this signature, she was officially relinquishing the last remaining link to the Fletcher fortune in her past life. She raised her head, looking at me with pure, unadulterated regret. Ryan, if I serve my time, if I come out in 5 years and work from the bottom up, will you ever give me a chance to just talk to you again? As a friend? I picked up my coat, stood up, and looked down at her through the glass. No, I said, my voice echoing with absolute finality. When you told me my illness wasn't going anywhere and that I should get a high-interest loan, you made your choice. You told me to figure it out, Chloe. I adjusted my cuff links, taking a step back toward the exit door. So enjoy your sentence, I added with a faint, cold smile. Go vote for your streamer from a prison cell. Ryan. No. Ryan. Don't leave me. Ryan. Her frantic, heartbreaking shrieks echoed through the concrete visitation hall as the heavy iron doors slammed shut behind me, severing her voice completely. Outside, the bright sun broke through the New York sky. Eleanor held the door open to a waiting luxury limousine. The board of directors in London is assembled for the Global Acquisition Summit. Mr. Fletcher, Eleanor reported efficiently as I stepped into the vehicle. And the international market response to your takeover has sent our stock to an all-time high. Good, I said, leaning back into the leather seat and looking out at the city skyline as the car accelerated toward the airfield. Let's begin.